Hello everyone, my name is Jose Argumedo and I'm here to talk about the Waifu2x app for the Mac App Store and for macOS, iOS, and iPadOS. We're specifically going to be focusing on macOS because I've done tutorials on it before, but it has been dramatically changed from what it used to be. So for one thing, the Waifu Magnifier app, which I talked about in a previous video, link below and also probably in that little pop-up button. That app has been deprecated. It is no longer the main Waifu2x app made by this developer. Instead, they have decided to put the iPad, iOS, and iPhone app into one application and have introduced a lot of new models. Yes, the app or the extra models do cost money, but nothing unreasonable, and it's, just a crazy powerful application, so I absolutely think it's worth it. In fact, after I've paid for this app already, or if you actually have Waifu Magnifier, there is an upgrade path to get the unified Waifu2x application. You just need to get in touch with the developer. I don't know if that's still going, but that's how I got my upgrade. And I would also say that, if you've not bought this application previously, it's worth it. It's a really powerful application. I really like, in my opinion, this is probably the best implementation of Waifu2x as well as certain models. And I'm going to show you what has changed. For those of you that remember the last tutorial I did, you might remember that I suggested the way to do video was to create an image sequence and upscale each one of those images individually and then reintegrate that image sequence into a video sequence. You no longer need to do that. That is not necessary. But for those of you that, have never used Waifu2x before, usually it's a photo editor. And so this is a photo from Burn Warriors that we have here. And if we click next, oh, by the way, the Preferences tab doesn't really do anything anymore. I should probably blur that out. Whoops. There is definitely more you can do via command line, but that is beyond the scope of this video because I honestly can't really get it to work. But images are pretty well supported. So if you go next, you can set your specified path. You can also set the model, and there's a lot of them, including the original Waifu2x models. There is Real Essergan. Pan, I've not really gotten to use very much because it doesn't really work that well. Hopefully it'll be fixed. And then Real Kugan, which is the model I tend to use, as well as all the settings for each, including, if you use CUNet, it changes its settings for that. If you use Real Essergan has, a couple of models of its own, including, Anime 4X filter. You can pick the format you want, yada, yada, yada. Now, that is all wonderful and great and perfect. It is really easy to use. What I will say is that there is also an advanced menu. So there's basic and advanced. You switch to advanced, it gives you a little more control. So like 16-bit, for example, is something that I tend to use for my PNGs because why not? Even though that's probably overkill for this particular photo that I put in. You can pick the compression. You can do whatever you need to do. You even downscale something and then it will show you down here what your final resolution is going to be. There's a whole lot you can do with this. And of course you can set where you're going to send something. So actually, let me change that just to switch it to the tutorial folder here. Sorry guys, I know this is blurred out. I just don't want you seeing all my stuff. Open. So we're moving to the tutorial here. And I'll just go ahead and start this. And as you can see, so we're on an M1 MacBook Pro, by the way, and it's not using the GPU to process or the CPU to process any of this imagery. It is actually using the Apple Neural Engine. And as you can see, it went through and did it real fast. I just picked random settings, so I have no idea if this looks any good. In fact, this doesn't look very good. Probably not the settings I would use. But it did it extremely fast. And of course, you can go back and try a different model. So I'm going to try Real Kugan here, and I'm just going to go, 4x, and I'm going to leave it to the conservative model, and I'm going to take down the intensity. And everything has a little description so you can see how much. Like lower intensity preserves color better. You know, the default value is 1.0. I'm going to go back to 1.0 for this one. And we are going to start and see what that looks like. But as you can see, it zips through it pretty quickly. It is one image, but it zipped through it very quickly. And this is the image here. Looks a little better. You could probably tweak it and play with it a little bit. There are other models in Real Kugan. I hope that's how it's pronounced, by the way. I have no idea how it's actually pronounced. But I know a lot of you are interested in video. And when it comes to video, it will just go ahead and process it depending on the format. Let me make a very quick change so that we're not sitting here all day. I should have done this ahead of time. Excuse me. Trim. We're going to trim to like the last 30 seconds here. We'll just do that. New clip. Put this in my tutorial. Save. That's all. 30-second-ish clip. There. So we save that, put that away. All right, so I have my little clip here, about 30 seconds. Oh, I actually kind of almost hit that. So depending on the type of format, usually H.264, HEVC, and now ProRes in the advanced menu only, and it is an experimental feature, it's very, very blatant about that. You can actually just take a video clip and pop it in. You don't need to do image sequences anymore. That is a thing of the past. Next, we are going to check out the settings here. We're going to do two times on this so it doesn't take as long, but it shouldn't take as long anyways. We can choose the codec down here. We're going to do H.264. You can ignore the audio if you want to marry that later, but I'd leave it on. In the MOV, you have a little more options, and specifically if you're in the advanced menu. If you're in the basic menu, you just get to select the actual the container. I don't think you get to select the codec. So let's go back to advanced, and we are going to look at MOV. MOV now offers ProRes support. Now look, most of you don't need this. It is absolutely not a feature that a lot of you need. In fact, it's very clear here, and when you first use it, it sends up a warning. It's not going to send up a warning this time if I select ProRes because I already agreed to it, but it is an experimental feature. The only reason we're able to do this is because iOS now has ProRes encoders and decoders built into the iPhone 13 Pro, and as well as the M1 MacBook Pro, but this will work on the regular M1 as well as Intel machines. So if you want to do ProRes, you can on specific iPhones. I think you can do it on iPads. I don't have an iPad, so I can't try it. But you can definitely do it on anything with an M1 chip or an Intel chip if you're on macOS. And if you're on iPhone, you can do it with an iPhone 13 Pro, though I don't recommend it. And for this case, we are just going to stick to H.264, which is the original format. If you need more customization features, or if you need more control over your codec, that is going to happen through the command line, which you can use. And in fact, it says it here. There's a CLI version which you can access. I don't really like command line, and most of my needs are filled up through the application itself. So if you have something a little more exotic, like probably an MKV or something similar to that, it will. You should probably go through the command line, and hopefully you're comfortable enough yourself to do that. But again, all the features are the same. We're going to change the model here. We're gonna try noise level 1, just to see what it does. And we're gonna stick with Real Kuyan. Again, there are a lot of models here you can choose from. And then we're gonna hit start, and hopefully it'll take very little time to do this. And for those of you that are familiar with Waifu2x on Windows, at least my experience with it on Windows, know that it's going pretty fast here. It's just kind of ripping through us. And again, it's not using the GPU, it's not using the CPU on this particular computer. It is all happening via the Apple Neural Engine and then the media blocks, aka the media encoders, which do support H.264, H.265, and ProRes, are handling the actual encode of the final video. And it's just, I mean, we're already 4 seconds in. That's a pretty big feat. So it's very, very advanced how far this has come. For those of you that, again, remember the last tutorial I did on this application, the days of making image sequences are gone. They are over. You don't need to do that anymore. I know I got a lot of questions about image sequences, but you don't need to do that anymore. It's completely unnecessary. But while we let this go ahead and load here, I will come back in a couple of seconds and talk about, basically the end, and we'll see the results together. All right. So 289 seconds later, or 4 minutes later, 4.8 minutes later, it is done. It's done. So it's already finished, and it's got the file where I asked it to be, right here. And just for reference, let's take a look at, I'm going to turn the audio off. Let's take a look at what it looks like. That standard def looks pretty good. This is one of the max plays for Superman shorts, by the way. And already it upconverted it and did pretty good job. I would definitely tune it a little bit more. I'm pretty happy with these results. I probably wouldn't use the noise level 1. I'd probably go back to conservative. But it did a pretty good job with this. And yeah, as you can see, it's upscaled and it works well. Again, if you, one minor note, I guess I would say, is that if you are using something a little more exotic, like say X.264 or X.265 to encode your videos, you just want to make sure that you are using settings that are supported by iOS, and because this, again, at its core is an iOS app. Meaning if you do something like X.264 lossless, like you crank the constant quantizer all the way to 0, it probably won't open because that's a file format that's pretty not recognized. But if you use typical Apple encoders, or if you use X.264 and kind of set it to tune it to work on iOS, your clips should work. Ditto anything ProRes. I know FFmpeg has its own ProRes encoder. I have found that ProRes encoder is very, very good and has no problems whatsoever. So you shouldn't have a problem opening files from that, but it will use the official ProRes encode decode blocks to do all this work. And again, as you saw, it's pretty fast. I maybe this is just me, but a few years ago when I would try to do this on Windows, it took forever, and it just ripped through this 30-second clip, no problem, very easily. So that's Waifu2x in a nutshell. This is the new version of the application. I highly recommend it. It is incredibly well optimized, especially for the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. You don't need those computers necessarily. You can also use an M1, or if you're still on Intel, like I still am, I have an Intel iMac downstairs. It still works, and it works really great. In that case, it will use your GPU. I'm trying to think of any last things, but yes, the app does cost money. It's not free, but it's so easy to use, and it's so well optimized for Mac, iOS, and iPad that what started out as a tech demo for this developer has become a really well fleshed out application that I cannot recommend enough. It is worth the few dollars that it does cost. I don't have the price in front of me, but I don't think like you'll be spending more than like $10 on the entire app. And I highly recommend it. Check out this Waifu2x on the App Store. The only complaint I have is I wish I could change the icon like you can in the macOS version, or in the iOS version rather. You can change the icon, but for now you have to stick with this one. Hopefully the developer will bring those options back. But yeah, this is it. Check out Waifu2x. I would also recommend visiting the GitHub. I will leave that link down below. Get in touch with the developer if you ever have any issues. Also, probably learn how to use the command line version if you need something a little more advanced. This covers all my needs. Hopefully it covers yours. But yeah, this is an amazing application. Highly recommend it. You no longer need compressor or any other video application to just get stuff converted quickly. So check out Waifu2x. And if you're feeling generous, there of course is a direct link to GitHub here. You can send feedback, but I would also recommend giving a tip even after you bought this application, because this application has just evolved immensely over the last few years. I cannot recommend it enough. All right, and with that, if there's any questions or comments, I will take a look in the comment section and I'll try to answer what I can. Hopefully there's not another drastic update that should hold for a while. I waited to make this tutorial so that most of the changes were settled, because Waifu2x for these first 3 months of 2022 really went through some drastic changes, and I made sure to explore the application as best I could to make sure that when I made this tutorial that I wouldn't be making another one a couple of months down the road. So check out Waifu2x on the Mac App Store, and have a nice day. Hope this was helpful.